Welcome to the library. I'm Brittany, founder of the Literary Moms Book Club and your host. Here we go beyond the pages with authors, educators, and book lovers to discover the deeper meaning and beauty found in great stories.
Well, welcome to the Literary Moms Book Club. I'm Brittany Dahl, and today I am thrilled to be joined by Annie B. Jones. Annie is the owner of The Bookshelf, which is an independent bookstore in Thomasville, Georgia. She is the host of From the Front Porch podcast, and she's author of Ordinary Time, which I have right here, Lessons Learned While Staying Put. So I've spent the last week or so rereading this book. This is my second time. And Annie has a gift for writing about ordinary life in a way that really helps us to notice what's beautiful. So her essays really explore friendship and family, community, books, of course, and faith as well. So, Annie, thank you for being here. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted, and it's just an honor to ever be asked to talk to people about my book and my work. And I'm so glad it's resonating with people. So I'm happy to be here.
Great, thank you. As a bookstore owner and doing the podcast, you spend a lot of time helping other people to find books. What are some qualities that make a book truly worth reading to you?
Mm. So, so much of book selling is all about who is asking for the book, right? Like how we sell a book to a retired person versus how we sell a book to a busy mom versus how we sell a book to a fourth grader is very different. But I think when folks come in looking for something to read, and I think particularly for maybe a reluctant reader, I think we sometimes use the phrase reluctant reader for like an adolescent or somebody, but I think even adults can be reluctant readers or readers who maybe have fallen out of the habit of reading or who think that reading isn't for them. They don't have time, whatever.
Yeah.
And so if somebody like that comes into the store, then I think the key is asking good questions to see what their interest is. Like thinking beyond maybe the genres that I really like, but oh, you have an interest in gardening or you have an interest in science fiction, and like how can I find a book suitable? And then this is going to sound weirdly specific, but a book that is fewer than 300 pages. If it's an audiobook, I stick to 8 hours or fewer. Again, this is for the reader who maybe is trying to find time, like maybe struggles a little bit to finish something, or maybe their life is really hectic. So the reader like that who comes in, I'm looking for fewer than 300 pages. I'm looking for an audiobook that's 8 hours or less, and I'm looking for short chapters. And if they're amenable to it, I will frequently gravitate toward an essay collection or a short story collection because those are books that can be read in little increments, and it's okay if you're interrupted. My husband teased me the other day because I was watching a TV show, and he walked in the room and he like asked me what it was about, and then he saw I had watched 4 minutes of the show, and then he came back like I don't know half an hour later, and I had watched a total of 8 minutes of the show because life just happens, right? Like so you're hitting pause, you're doing laundry, you're answering a phone call, you're taking care of your child, whatever. So I think for our maybe um, struggling attention spans, I think a short story collection or an essay collection is a really good place to start. Recent short story collections, too, that have been connected short stories, because I think sometimes people are a little intimidated by short stories. It like takes them back to college or high school or something. So Rebecca Kaufman just put out a great connected short story collection that reads more like a novel called The Reservation. It's fantastic. It takes place over the course of one day in a restaurant. And so I feel like a reader who maybe doesn't typically read a lengthy novel would fall into that book and get sucked into one of the stories, then finish the story, then maybe go cook dinner. Then they come back, they read another story, they get ready for bed, they read another, you know what I mean? Like something that's pick
Yes.
up and put downable. So shorter length, not nothing too terribly long, so for that attention span that we struggle with, and something that has essays or short stories, chapters where you can kind of read a chapter and then put it down for a few minutes and then pick it back up again. I think that's kind of my go-to for a reader maybe who is struggling to build back the habit of reading.
Awesome. That's really insightful. Do you find that like most people who come into the bookstore sort of fall under that category? Like, do you have a lot of people who come in or just like, I'm too busy, I need something that
Yeah.
meets what you just described?
So this is super fun. During the week, it's our regulars. It's
Okay.
people who love to read. It's people who are there for the latest Anne Patchett novel or they want the new Elizabeth Strout. They're like our our ride or dies, like our regular customers. But then starting on like Friday or Saturday, we are located in a small downtown. And so the number of people who just kind of walk in the store who maybe are not readers at all, and that has always been my goal is when we have people who just through foot traffic happen to wander in, I want to grab them. Like I want to
Yeah.
find them something that they might really enjoy. So I think Fridays and Saturdays in particular, and Saturdays are story time. And so while the kids are being read to, I do think moms maybe are in a place where all of a sudden they're thinking, well, maybe I should pick a book up. Like maybe, it's almost like going to the library or something. Like you're surrounded by it. So maybe for the first time you think, oh, maybe I'd like a
Yeah, this
rom-com
could be
or
me. Yeah.
yeah, maybe I could pick up this habit again. And so I do think particularly on the weekends, when it's people who maybe are wandering in or they're there for their kids or something else, then I do think we get the maybe the new reader or the person who read when they were a kid, but they haven't really in adulthood because their job or their life or, all the reasons. There are all kinds of reasons, but I
Right.
do think those customers who just kind of stumble upon the bookshelf, that's what we're trying to help them find.
Well, that's really exciting though that
Yeah.
you have people just walking in and you could
Yes.
change the trajectory of their life with something like that.
Yes,
Like
that's what
like
we hope.
let
We
me put this
certainly
book in
hope
your
that.
hand.
Exactly. That's what we
That's
hope. And I think every person who works at the bookshelf is so enthusiastic about reading. Like, and we all read widely, and some of us read 100 books a year, and some of us read 12 books a year, 20 books a year. It doesn't have to be where you're reading, a book a day or something like that.
right,
But
right.
everybody is so enthusiastic. So Kendall's our romance reader, so she can recommend a good rom-com. I love literary fiction. Olivia loves a thriller. So there's something I hope to for everybody.
Yeah, you can point them in the right direction. That's
Hmm.
great. Well, while I was reading your book, one of the things that really struck me was just how many moments actually made me think like, oh, me too. Like,
Good.
absolutely. So
Good.
I really felt like your book was very personal. And there were
Mm,
even a few stories where I was kind of like cheering you on with the story that you were telling because it was very personal. And I just thought, you know what? Good job. Thank you for sharing that
thank
because
you.
I think a lot of people will they keep some of that stuff inside and they don't want to share it. But
Hmm.
it's great to hear those stories to know, like, hey, you're not alone. You're not the
Hmm.
only one experiencing this. So while you were writing the book and
Hmm.
sharing some of these experiences, what are some things that you learned?
Mm. I think one of the things I learned kind of hints at what you're talking about, which is for me, writing is deeply personal and pretty private. So I have written in journals my whole life. Then, of course, in the mid 2000s, I wrote a blog post just like probably everybody else. Um, so
Yep.
I've always I've always processed what I think through words. And so writing the book felt in some ways very natural. Like I sat at this desk in this chair and, got to work and wrote those essays and kind of thought through those words. What I maybe realized only as we eked closer to publication was, oh, right, people will be reading this. Which of course I knew. I mean, I sell books, and I am delighted that a publisher picked up this book and wanted to sell it and put it in people's hands. And so I knew people would be reading it. But I think I envisioned maybe a stranger reading it or a random person from the internet reading it. But I've said in other conversations, I did not actually picture my friends reading it, my neighbors reading it, my town reading it.
Hmm.
And I'm almost glad I didn't because I might not have been able to write as vulnerably or as honestly if I had constantly been thinking about my random neighbor reading my book.
Yeah.
Because now it does feel a little bit like, oh, people know things about me, or they might think they know a lot about me because they read the book. And so that there is something kind of odd about that. And I think it's worth it. I mean, I think it's worth it because as a reader, I love those moments when I get to read a book and say, oh, yes, me too. Like, oh, I'm so glad to hear somebody else say that. So the fact that somebody else read my book and thinks that brings me a lot of joy. So I
Mhm.
don't have any regrets, but I think I did learn through the writing process. One of the things I learned was, oh, yes, people will be reading this. And along those lines, at some point, the book will no longer be mine. So all of the stories, all of the essays that I wrote in ordinary time really did happen to me. They are real experiences. They're things I learned probably over the course of a decade plus. Um, but an author, I believe it was Jeff Chu. I was in the process of putting my book into the world, and Jeff Chu, who is another author, he was posting about recording his audiobook or something. And he talked about like at some point he realizes, okay, this book is not mine anymore. And sure enough, when I was in the process of recording the audiobook and I realized I couldn't like correct even like a contraction, like maybe in the book I wrote can't, and maybe I wanted to say cannot. Well, I couldn't. They wouldn't let me. Like that, no, what's in print is what has to be read. And that made me think, oh, this is done. Like this is done. And this isn't mine anymore. And at some point,
Mhm.
it's going to be Brittany's, and it's going to be this book club's, and it's going to be my neighbor's. It's going to be the guy who sits next to me in church. It's going to be his. And at some point, I really did have to learn. I've done with this book as much as I can. I've got to trust that I have been as wise and as generous and as thoughtful as I possibly can, and now I got to let go. And
Yeah.
that means I don't read reviews. I mean, people tag me in reviews and sometimes I'll read those because generally those are nice. But I don't read reviews. I try I don't do much digging around ordinary time. Once it went out into the world, I was kind of like, okay, the world will do with it what it will.
Yeah.
And so that was a big lesson I learned that I hope if I ever get to write another book, like that will be something that brings me some comfort is knowing like eventually you cannot control this anymore. Like this is somebody else's.
Yeah. It almost becomes just like a little snapshot in time. And the
Yes.
beauty of it is like you have still continued to grow and change,
Hmm.
hopefully. And you can
Hmm.
look back and say like, well, that was me then. And
Yes.
it's I maybe you don't even agree with everything that you wrote anymore, or
Right.
like some things might like
That's
shift or
right.
change a little bit, but like that's okay too. Like
Yeah,
we
it's a time capsule. I think some
yeah.
another author that I respect, I think, I kind of put it in those terms. And I'm writing and kind of thank goodness, right? Like I don't really have any desire to write like general nonfiction that would be very prescriptive or very like, here's what you should do, or here's my interpretation of this thing. Like mine is memoir, and so that to me is a little freeing. Um, and frees me, I think, to yes, change my mind. Like this is a snapshot of my life already since I've written that book, since I published that book already. Some of those friendships have changed. Some of my faith experiences have changed. But that is definitely an accurate portrayal of what I learned and what my life has been like. And I'm still learning those lessons. I mean, I think while I was writing the book, two more of my friends moved. Like, so
Oh
I thought,
gosh.
oh, God, I guess I'm just going to keep living this lesson over and over again until I get it right. I don't know. So, yes, I think looking looking at your this I struggle with, but like looking at yourself and your past self with as much grace as you offer other people. Trying to offer, oh, Annie who wrote that essay, I stand by that essay. Like, and I've not reread the book since I published it, but I've read certain essays for different events or things like that, and I've thought, oh, do I still think that? Yes. And is that a portrayal of exactly what I was experiencing at that season? Yes. Yeah, I think looking at it as a time capsule or a snapshot is a great way to do that.
That's great. So in our book club, each year we focus on a theme. And so this
Hmm.
year our theme is it's beauty. And we're especially looking at beauty through this like a lens of attentiveness, of slowing down,
Mm.
and really, so I read this very short essay by Jason Baxter called Why
Okay.
Literature Still Matters. And
Mm.
he quotes C.S. Lewis in it a fair amount.
Mm.
And he describes beauty in there as, or C.S. Lewis, he's quoting him, and
Mm-hmm.
C.S. Lewis is explaining that oftentimes when we're confronted with something beautiful, it's almost accompanied with a sense of sorrow.
Mm.
And
Mm.
you you might have this feeling like that beauty is like over there or kind of like far
Mm.
off.
Mm.
And we ask ourselves, well, how do we get that beauty in us? How
Mm.
can I eat the beauty, I guess?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
like we can do it through literature, through art,
Mm.
through
Mm. That's great.
theater. And, we can experience it and almost make it part of us kind of through some of those things. And
Beautiful.
so when we are attentive, when we slow down, we we can almost experience it a little bit more, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we've tried to be intentional about the books we've picked with that idea in
Mm-hmm.
mind. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the books in April we read Jayber Crow, and then
Oh
in
yeah.
May we read Crossing to Safety, which
Oh.
was wild because we read those two books and then
Mm-hmm.
I had scheduled this interview with you. And
Mm-hmm.
so after you said yes, I was like, I need to reread it. And in your introduction, those are the
Those two
two books
references.
you
Yeah.
mentioned. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, this is
Yeah.
wild.
That's fun. That's
And
so
so,
fun.
yeah, I was super excited. But I would love to know kind of your thoughts on that idea. Like, how do you see this beauty and longing or sense of sorrow kind of working together in storytelling?
Mm. This is something I think about a lot, particularly because I stay. So the book is all about staying when everybody else leaves, or, kind of living the same boring life over and over again, when everybody else, or it feels like everybody else is getting this grand adventure. And so to me, the things you're talking about tie directly into that, where part of the reason I travel is so that I can bring home these experiences that I got to have in New York or Paris or hear me out, Kansas City or Jackson, Mississippi. Like it doesn't have to be Paris. But like I love to travel. I love to visit my friends. I love to visit other parts of this country. I love to travel overseas. And part of it is like, what can I bring home with me? And what can I bring home as a practice? Like, oh, one thing I love about New York is public transport. Well, public transport doesn't exist where I live. Okay, but I can walk more. Maybe I can go on walks more. Maybe I can be willing to take a little bit more time with things. And so all of that ties into my regular life. So trying to, as you said, kind of trying to slow down, trying to notice. I think that's key. And then all of that goes into storytelling. So I remember when I was writing Ordinary Time, I'm very detail oriented. No, I'm not super detail oriented. I'm very deadline oriented. Very deadline oriented. And I do love an assignment. And the assignment was to finish Ordinary Time. And so I like had days that I carved out in my calendar that were writing days. And many of those days I sat in this chair and wrote for hours. And I would take little breaks, but like I would write for hours because I also run a bookstore. I also host a podcast. So like the discipline was key in getting this done. But then I had some days where like it just wasn't happening. Like the writing wasn't coming. And I told a friend who is a writer and business coach, and she was like, I think I said something like, well, sometimes I just want to go to Target on those days, or I just want to walk around on those days. And she was like, well, yeah, that's part of it too. You can't write in a vacuum. Like you have to get out in the world, and it might not be going to the art museum. It might be going to Target and observing how people interact with each other, or it might be driving down the road and listening to a new Mumford and Sons song, or like and that was so helpful to me to realize that the practice of writing and storytelling is not just literally sitting down and writing or literally telling a story. It's also living the life that inspires the writing and inspires the storytelling. Um, I think for me, the best stories come from my lived experience or my conversations with my friends or my stories that I hear from my family. And so that requires being out in the world to experience those things, to hear those things, to listen to those things, to participate in those things. And so I think noticing and participating in beauty are crucial parts to ultimately telling the story of beauty or to living the story of beauty. Um, yeah, that's kind of what I would love to read that essay, but that's kind of what that reminds me of is like it's okay to get out of the chair and I think I even say this in ordinary time as it relates to reading, right? I love reading. Oh my gosh, I love reading so much, and I love to read for comfort. But I think one thing as a bookseller and as a reader I've learned is, but you also read so that you can go out and live. Like you
Yes.
read so that you can ultimately turn the page, sigh, give the book a hug, and then say, okay, gotta go be Annie B. Jones now. Gotta go be a person now. Gotta go be a wife. Gotta be a daughter. Gotta be a mother. Gotta be a friend. You can't just stay holed up in your house all day reading books. I mean, would I love that? I think I would love it a lot, but I don't think I'd love it always. The point to me is that a book prepares you for what's next. Like
Yes.
it makes you turn the page and then be ready to go do your thing. And so anyway, I think that that relates to it as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We've actually talked some about that, like with some of the ladies in the book club, and
Hmm.
how I mean, you hear a lot of people say, like, I read to escape, like I
Hmm.
just want to get
Yes.
away. But at the same time, I think just like traveling, like we
Yes.
read because we need a vacation, we need a break,
Yes.
but that experience changes us. And when we come
Yes.
back to our everyday ordinary, just like you said, like we get to be a little bit, we get to be present for that, but we're a little bit different
Yes.
also.
And
Um,
and even, like even when we read for escape, like I think fairly recently I read the book Dolly All the Time by Annabelle Monaghan. She's an author I love. To me, she's the kind of romance novelist I want to read. She's the kind of romance book I want to read. And of course, it's got a fun, beachy, cartoonish kind of cover, right? Like illustrated cover. It's very fun. You throw it in your beach bag. And yet, there are very deep things in there about there's a great relationship between a mother and a son. And as a relatively new mother to a son, I was very focused in on that storyline. There's a great small business storyline and actually some really interesting truths about small business operation. And then it is an ode to caregivers. I'm an eldest daughter, and I immediately thought, oh my gosh, is this author an eldest daughter? And she's not. She wrote it because she has observed her sister for so long and how her sister cares for people. And so that is a rom-com romance novel, very cute, very fun, very beachy, very escapist. But I learned something from it that helped me in my business, in my relationship with my son, in how I run my small business. So, like, that's the other thing too, is even when we read for escape, it's shaping us, like it's showing us some things. And so I think that is a fascinating part of reading too. So even when you read for escape, I still think it's preparation in some way.
Yeah, that's great. I really like that. So what's one small, like, ordinary thing that's helping you to see beauty right now?
Mm. I'm trying to be slower. There's in our living room right now, my son's first birthday is coming up. And right now there's a banner that says, hooray, hooray. And I told my husband, I said, I can tell I'm in a weird headspace because every time I walk by that banner, I could swear it says, hurry, hurry. And it does not. Like, it does not. It says, hooray, hooray. But we have so much on our plates. And I say we in the personal sense and also in the royal sense. We all have so
Yeah.
much on our plates. Um, And I would love to be a little bit better at slowing down because I think when I'm in a hurry, I stop noticing the beauty.
Mm,
And writing Ordinary Time opened my eyes to those things, particularly stories that I had already lived that I was looking back on. But what I would love to be good at is in the moment. Um, Like, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could learn those lessons as I'm living them instead of later? Or as I told a friend, wouldn't it be great if I didn't dread something and instead learned that it mostly works out, so I shouldn't dread it anymore? Like, so I think kind of maybe slowing down, paying attention, and not hurrying. I mean, I think that is key for me. I also this year have been trying to pay a lot of attention to this idea of a frictionless existence. I think I read an article in like The Atlantic or something at the start of the year, and it was like, please let's add more friction. And what it meant was we live in an age of convenience and an age of if I want to go to the grocery store, I can actually like order my groceries from my phone, which has been incredibly helpful as the new mom. And then I can go drive and pick it up. I never really have to talk to anybody. They put it in my car and then I come home.
Yeah.
And I have done that, by the way, many, many times.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I do wonder when we eliminate friction, if we're eliminating the chance for relationship, the chance for connection, and the chance to connect or see something, like the connection to see a funny human interaction. I went to the grocery store in person, like myself, my whole body, like into the store the other day, and it feels like a It feels like I deserve a gold medal when I leave the actual grocery store. But I went in the grocery store and I was standing in line. I don't even remember if Isaac was with me or not. But behind me in line, there was this older gentleman and this younger woman. And the older gentleman started talking to the younger woman about her tattoos, and not in a creepy way, in a truly lovely way. And they had the best interaction about what her tattoos meant and who they were honoring. And then he talked about his family. And it was the most lovely human interaction. And I thought, if I was sitting in my car in the parking lot, I would have missed this. I would have missed getting to bear witness to humanity. And if I'm interested in storytelling, shouldn't I want to interact with humanity? Shouldn't I want to be where it's happening? So slowing
That's a
down,
sweet story.
and it was so sweet. And so slowing down and being willing to experience some friction. And sometimes that means going to the grocery store in person. Sometimes it means going through the regular checkout line instead of the self-checkout line. Um, Sometimes for me, it means focusing on my in-person relationships. I'm really good at focusing on my long distance relationships because I can do them at any time. I can send a Voxer message or do a Marco Polo at any time. What requires more of me is actually my in-person relationships, more scheduling, more texting. So yeah, those are some ways I think I'm trying to pay better attention.
That's great. Yeah, and it's not easy. Like
Oh no,
yeah, it's
it's
not easy. And
not.
I guess that's kind of I mean that's friction in itself, you know, like
Yes.
the fact that you know like community is important. We are called to
Hmm.
be in community,
Yeah.
but it's going to take effort. Um,
Yes.
so yeah, that's like a whole conversation in
Oh, a
itself,
whole
but that's a,
conversation. Yes.
that's a great point. So these days, like, you know, things have kind of changed for you in the last year, but what does your life look like now, that you have a kid in the mix?
I was so maybe not worried, but like maybe had some anticipatory angst about reading with a baby. And I don't want to fault anyone, okay? I don't want to fault anyone, but I feel like I did get a lot of warnings. Like, "Oh, well, you won't be able to read that many books anymore," or "Oh, you're not it's going to be hard to find time now." Like, I don't know that people meant it in the tone in which I heard it. But it felt like people were preparing me for the worst. And as a new mom, I don't know how long I'll get to keep saying I'm a new mom, but I still feel very new at it. I do wonder if we could do a better job of preparing for the best. Like I just generally, just and maybe that's a good human lesson too, not just for parents. Um, but my reading life is great. My reading life is great. And yes, there are slumps, but guess what? There were slumps before Isaac. Like there are seasons in which I want to write or want to read. I want to watch TV. I don't want to read. Like there are seasons in which I cannot focus very much on reading a book. That is always true because I run a business. And so my reading does feel seasonal. Like I really can't read very much in November, December. I can't, my brain won't shut down. Um, but I actually I was working on my personal newsletter the other day and I was like, I want to count how many books I've read. It doesn't matter. Number doesn't matter. But I wanted to count how many books I had read since Isaac has been born. And since Isaac was born, I've read 101 books. And that is not a flex. That is not a brag. But for somebody who is very worried that it's not just reading for me, it's a part of who I am. Like it is reading, but it's very much something I've done since I was a kid. It feels a part of my identity. And so I
That's great.
worried about that loss of identity, just like any other part of mother. I think for me that was a big fear was loss of identity. And so the fact that I still got to read. I've read some more audiobooks. Maybe I've read more digitally. I was not a Kindle user until 2024 because I'm not a big Amazon person for obvious reasons. But I needed to use the Kindle to read advanced reader copies. Sometimes they were only available digitally, especially post pandemic. So I finally succumbed and got a Kindle in 2024. And so I will sometimes read on my Kindle. That's helpful because it's one-handed. Now I know as a mother how important that is. Mom's told me that, and now I know. Um, but so maybe I'm reading more audiobooks. Maybe I'm reading more digitally. But this thing that always provided me comfort is still providing me comfort. And this thing that I am interested in, I am still interested in it. Now, fairly recently, I forget what book it is, but there was a book that I read where I stayed up so late reading it. And that season of my life probably should be over. Like I think I
Yeah,
stayed up till the wee hours and I had
you
the best
feel it
time, by the
much
way.
more in the morning.
Yes, but I was like, this is great because I really do think I stayed up till like 2 or 3 reading it. I wish I could tell you what it was. But I was like, oh, look at me. I'm still the Annie I've always been. Like I'm reading books, I'm staying up late. And then the next morning when I had to get up at 6 and feed Isaac, I was like, oh no. This is not this is not ideal. So the staying up late, the reading into the wee hours of the morning season may not be for now, but I am delighted to say that I still really love to read, and I love to read to Isaac, but I also love reading for myself. And I
Great.
still love, and maybe, maybe my audiobook habits will change when he can start to comprehend what I'm reading, like maybe I won't listen to, maybe I won't listen to a romance audiobook while my son is in the car. But I've been so wonderfully surprised that like, oh, I still like books. I still have time. I think it's about having help. I I would I would be remiss if I
Oh,
did not
good
say I
for
have a
you.
lot of familial support, like in my husband, but also in my extended family, my mom, my aunt, like people who help provide care for Isaac and provided care for me in doing that. And so I have had time in a way that I really was worried I wouldn't. And I also think there's a season to everything. And so even when there have been months where I haven't read as much, it comes back. The love comes back, the season comes back, and so not to panic too much when you do have those lulls.
That's great. And that's really encouraging to hear too.
Yeah.
When my daughter, or both of my kids, my audiobook usage went up quite
Hmm.
a bit. And I was
Yeah.
reading mostly in the middle of the night, which I'd shared with
Hmm.
you before we started
Yes.
recording. But my pastor's wife actually told me that she had read some study where
Hmm.
if you wake up in the middle of the night and read like a poem or
Yeah.
one other thing, it really sticks with you. And this had been like
Mm.
after I had experienced all of this, but I had read it was the Angle of Repose by Wallace Stegner
Uh-huh. Oh wow.
when in the middle of the night,
Hmm.
and that book has stuck with me. And she's
Oh,
3
that's
now, but
funny.
it was
Yeah.
like I have I
Oh,
can
that's
recall
hilarious.
so many parts of that book just
Yeah.
because I think because I read it in the middle of the night.
That's
And
a great tip too. Just like because I think our inclination now is to like reach for our phones. Do you know what I mean? Like if we
yes,
get up in the middle of the night, but I like the idea that like you could reach for a poetry book or you could reach, for an
yeah,
essay. Oh,
yeah,
how
and it'll do you
interesting.
good later on.
Yeah,
So,
totally. Yeah. I
yeah,
think it's just important and everybody's different, right? Everybody's mothering experience is different. Everybody's reading life is different. Um I firmly believe quantity does not matter. But I also think it's important to tell each other, hey, you do have time, or you can have time. Like it just might
Mhm.
look different, or your reading life like you might be reading in the middle of the night instead of during the day. Like I used to read a lot when I got home from work before my husband got home from work. Okay,
Mhm.
I don't read in the afternoons now at all because that's Isaac time. I don't, so
Right.
reading in the afternoons is like non-existent. Um, it may be reading to him, but not reading my own
On your
books.
own,
And
yeah.
so I think just kind of learning to adjust the rhythms of our life change over the seasons anyway. And so reading is no different. But I wish we would encourage each other more to be like, no, you'll read again. Like it'll be fine. Like I
Yeah.
hope that if the time ever comes when I am asked, I will remember, wait, I need to be positive about this. I need to tell them they'll be okay.
No negative birth stories.
That's exactly
Yes.
exactly right. That's right.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you too, just about those types of books that have really shaped you.
Mm.
I don't know if you're familiar with this quote, but C.S. Lewis, one more time for you.
Hmm.
He wrote an essay where he explained how some stories are stealing past the watchful dragons. And what he
Mm.
means is sometimes you
Mm.
can be directly confronted or maybe or just sitting in like a sermon at church on
Hmm.
Sunday or in a
Hmm.
Bible study and you're
Hmm.
hearing someone directly say like, here's what the word of God says, here's how you should be
Hmm.
living, here's what's right. And you kind of have your guard up a little bit, maybe
Hmm.
thinking like, oh, that's not me, but so and
Hmm.
so sure could hear that message or
Hmm. Hmm.
but then you read a story and your guard's down. So it's kind
Mm.
of stealing past or sneaking past
Mm.
those watchful
Oh, that's
dragons,
interesting.
and that story gets in you. Um, And the example he gives in that essay is David after his affair with Bathsheba. And Nathan
Mm,
came to him and shared this story about another
hmm.
man stealing someone's sheep.
Yes.
And David was like up in arms, like he should be murdered,
Yes.
like kill him, you know.
Yes.
Um, and
Oh, that's
then
good.
Nathan's like, well, that's you. You know, I'm telling this story
Mm,
about you. So are there
yes.
stories that you've experienced where you felt like it was in a way
Oh, that's so good.
shaping you spiritually more so than like direct teaching might?
Huh. Oh, that's so good. This is fascinating to me. I have not heard that quote, but that is what a, well, C.S. Lewis is so good. But I love this concept for a couple of reasons. First of all, I was raised, and I allude to it, or I don't allude to it. I'm pretty straightforward about it, but I was raised in a Christian tradition. And I talk about it in ordinary time, that very much abided by this concept of solo scriptura, meaning only scripture, scripture only. And I could talk all day about the pros and cons of that theological concept. But that was one of the things I struggled with a lot in that tradition because I have always loved books and I believe God's truth can be found in pretty much anything. Like he kind of finds a sneaky way of being in there, being wherever he wants to be. And so anyway, I that was always kind of a challenging concept that I kind of pushed up against. So I love this idea because I think C.S. Lewis is spot on. I just think sometimes stories speak to us in a way, and they can kind of get in sneakily. So I will say off the top of my head, and I already kind of mentioned it, but I'm a business owner, I'm a new mother. I hate business books. I hate parenting books so far. Now, some one could change my mind. But I struggle. Maybe I don't hate them. I struggle to read them. I struggle to read them. I'll read in a business book, I'll read like the first 50 pages and I'll be like, oh yeah, that was super helpful. And then I'll never pick it up again. Um, and I have done the same, I'm sorry to say, with some parenting books. Um, However, then I will read a book um that has, okay, so for example, I read the Ina Garten memoir, which was a lovely book. And it was all about her. Actually, it was a beautiful book about marriage because it's about her relationship with her husband. But as a business owner, I listened to that book, which is all just her personal story. But I listened to that book and thought, oh, that's some great business wisdom. Like, I just thought it was so helpful for entrepreneurship, but it's not billed as an entrepreneurship book or a business book, it's a memoir. Or the Dolly All the Time, which is a traditional romance novel. But instead, I immediately was like, oh, this is a beautiful book about motherhood. Like, this is a beautiful book about this relationship between a mother and a son. And it's never going to be billed that way. I don't even think it'll be in the book club discussion guide about that book. But there is a great mother-son relationship that I really paid attention to. And then on a spiritual scale, I think about books like Old Love Good Girls, which had so much to say about friendship and true friendship, or Gilead, which to me is so rich theologically and has so much to say about a deep and abiding faith. Um, Crossing to Safety is another one. That was a book for me where I thought, oh, my normal life is okay. Like, that is not a bombastic book with like, um, scandal. Like it's just a really good book about a good group of friends. Um, Whistler by Ann Patchett recently. I kept waiting for that book, and I've said this on on our store podcast, on my podcast. Um, I kept waiting for Whistler to take like a nefarious turn, and it never did. And I thought, oh, this is just a lovely book about a stepdaughter and a stepfather. Like it's just a lovely book about human relationships. So I think all of those books for me, and I think it definitely is my personality type, but they are much more impactful than sitting through a sermon. No shade to any
Right.
sermon I've ever sat through, except some shade to some sermons. But generally, like I think I do. I think there's a reason Jesus taught in parables. Like I
Mm,
absolutely think
absolutely.
there's a reason. Um, and I don't know. There are all these studies about fiction and fiction making us more empathetic and reading stories making us more empathetic people. And I think that's absolutely true. And I think about the things that it kind of, um, almost like pinches at in us. Like, I don't know, like maybe a character who uses certain kinds of language where I'm like, oh, that's how that sounds. Maybe I need to adjust mine. Or like maybe like I don't know, like I find this in TV too. Like I think any kind of storytelling. So like we've been watching a show that I really like, but I've been paying attention to one of the marriages in the show, and the wife is like super kind of snarky with her husband, and I was like, uh-oh, is that what that looks like? Because on the screen it doesn't look great. So so maybe I need to watch myself. So like I think stories,
Mhm.
it almost takes the like heightened sense of worry or anxiety out of it. Instead, we're just kind of listening. Like it
Yeah.
allows us to listen without our defenses up, our hackles up. I guess that's what C.S. Lewis is saying, right? Like it lets us to like um be more inclined to listen. And so I find that in good books, good TV, good storytelling of all kinds. But I think those are some examples. But I'm going to be thinking about that a long time because I think that that is 100% true. And I do feel like books have so much to teach us and can make us better if we
Yeah.
let them.
Yes. I let me add too that I will have women ask me, like, my child's struggling with this, what book should I read? And I
Hmm.
kind of hesitate to, I,
Yes.
I don't think that a book should always have like the moral answer to something.
Hmm.
I think, we read for enjoyment, we read to learn.
Yeah.
But I think as when you read as a whole and when you read widely, I think a lot of those lessons will just kind of come.
Yes.
But I don't necessarily
Yes.
think that we should read to push
Right.
those
Well,
ideas or
and I
those
also
on
think
the
they're
kids.
harder to read. Like I just think they're harder. Like
Mhm.
they're not as it's not enjoyable to read a business book, guys. It's not. It's not. And I grew up in a house, my mom read so many parenting books and she loved it. So like I think everybody is different. But for me, like you and I were talking, I think off air a little bit about Little Women. What better book about motherhood is there than watching Marmee do it? Like
Yeah.
Marmie's the icon. Like let's look at Marmee and she's not perfect. That's what's key. She's not perfect. She messes up. Um and so I love looking to fiction for the things I, again, maybe it's my personality. I'm just more inclined to listen when it's a story. I'm more inclined to change my own maybe attitude or to learn the lesson if I'm learning it from Ina Garten instead of from some business CEO,
Yeah.
even though she
I'm with
is a
you.
CEO.
Well, if you think of more books, we're always open to your
Yes.
recommendations. So send
Yes.
those our way.
Yeah.
Um, you in ordinary time, you mentioned being part of a book club. So what do you think makes reading in community so beautiful or so worthwhile?
My my book club here in Thomasville has been struggling. I joke that it's been on life support, but this year we moved to a quarterly model, which is working for us. So it doesn't meet quite as frequently, but I wasn't ready to let it die. And I wasn't ready to let it die because I still think I read so many books for work. That's another thing I should state when I talk about how many books I read and how much I read. Remember, it is a part of my job. Like
Right, right.
I have to read for my work. So I read for fun and for my job. But I read so many books for work and I read so many books solo that I think there is such value in getting together and reading books in community and being willing to like discuss things that might change your mind. So I have so many examples of this, but one is several years ago, my book club read the book Fair Play, which I did not like. It was nonfiction. And I also didn't have children at the time. I do not know if I would like it now. But it was all about making sure that like spouses bear an equal weight in the home, bear like an equal burden in the home. And I hated it. I hated the book. I didn't like it. I couldn't even now, all these years later, I don't know if I didn't like the tone or if I don't know. But I came to book club like fully prepared to be like, I'm going to tell everybody how much I hate this book. Because that's what book club's for, like to share your opinions and talk about it. And then one of my fellow book club members came in and she was like, guys, this book has changed my life. It changed my marriage. It changed how my household runs. And I wish there had been like a candid camera, like looking at my face, because I all of a sudden was like, oh, okay, well, that is a different perspective. And it was so helpful to me. Of course, helpful to me as a bookseller to always remember books are subjective and there are different books for different people. But also for me as a person to realize, oh, I might have hated this book, but it was for somebody. It was for
Mm.
somebody. and it helped them. And they loved it. They absolutely loved it. And it literally changed her life. So that is one example. Then recently, more recently, like in the last couple of months, my book club read A Guardian and a Thief by Megha Majumdar. And I love that book. I think it's fantastic. And there is so much rich conversation to be had because of that book. But it was fascinating. The book deals in part with this mother who's trying to get her son to America. They live in India. There's like a global crisis of some kind that is preventing them from getting to leave. The book never once feels preachy or moralistic. But it was fascinating because we had this wonderful conversation about immigration. And one of the book club members in my book club is a farmer. And so she was talking about the ways in which immigration policy affects and changes her job and like what she
Mm.
was witnessing. Um, and so I use that example to say the reason I don't give up on in-person book clubs is because we have the ability to do something that's not happening a lot right now, which we have the ability to talk to each other and to talk to people who think differently about us for all different things. Could be politics, could be theology, could be how we raise our kids, could be something as simple as you like an open door rom-com and I like a closed door rom-com. Like, but book clubs are one of the few spaces in which you might be gathered, even if everybody in your book club looks the same. Maybe we're all white ladies with brown hair and we all are in our 30s. I don't know. But like maybe your book club looks all the same, but I guarantee you you're different. And I guarantee you have different views and different feelings and different thoughts, and a book will bring that out. And I think books are still, I don't like to talk in hyperbole, but I still think they're the best way to have conversations about difficult things in a safe way or in a collegial way. Um, I don't know. This is interesting to me, but like I think it's interesting that all the Supreme Court justices are actually quite collegial with one another. And I think that's hilarious because meanwhile, the average American citizen can't like talk to their next door neighbor. But these Supreme Court justices like go out to dinner together. And I think it's important to remind ourselves that like if we have a common text, those Supreme Court justices have a common text, it's the Constitution, and then they have these legal documents that they're reading through, but it's making them have to talk to each other. And it's making them have to figure things out together. And even if we're not reading the Constitution, even if we're reading a work of fiction, the latest Oprah Winfrey pick or whatever, we're going to have different thoughts and feelings about it. And we're going to learn so much about each other and so much about our thoughts and so much about our decision making. And I just think there's nothing like talking in person. And I cannot state enough that I don't think we're doing that enough. And one safe, friendly, warm way to do it is in a book club.
Hmm. Oh, I really like the way you said that. Yeah, and I would say that's absolutely true for our book club and our experience. It's amazing to, um, we get caught up in the small chit chat at like story
Hmm.
time or school drop off
Hmm.
or soccer practice or something. And there's just so much more depth when you're actually
Yes.
talking through, these
Yes.
stories and what does it mean to
Yes.
you and how do you feel or, um,
Right.
yeah, I think that's great.
And the conversation can, I mean, I think that day we talked about immigration. It was fascinating to hear our friend's perspective. And we also then talked about loneliness and we talked about like, oh, like what does it mean to be a helper to each other? What does it mean to live in community with one another? I mean, we had a really wide ranging conversation, and that's the reality is that's not happening. Those grocery store interactions are important. Those pickup drop off questions are important. Conversations are important. Um, but I, if the depth's not happening at book club, I'm not sure where it's happening because of this hurried pace so many of us are living and because of we're not necessarily sitting on our front porch talking to our neighbors anymore. So I don't know where those conversations are happening unless you're being purposeful about it in a book club.
Right. And we need it. Like we
Yes,
long for that, like that type of
totally.
connection, especially when you are a mom with young kids, like
Yes.
you're around people all the time. Like
Yes.
you're always surrounded, but it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you feel connected.
Right.
In that, yeah, I value those conversations. So, well, I just have one more question, quick question for
Yeah.
you. We kind of talked a little bit about, encouraging the people who come in to your store about reading,
Hmm.
ones who might feel a little more reluctant. Is there any other encouragement that you would give women who are looking to rediscover reading again, but might not step into your store? What would you say to
Mm.
them?
I would first of all encourage audiobooks, which I was so reluctant to do. And I did not become an audiobook reader until the pandemic. And partly it's because my brain doesn't quite work that way. Like I'm not an auditory learner, so I still have to be mindful of what books I'm listening to, because sometimes they could just go in one ear and out the other. Like sometimes I may not be retaining anything. So it definitely depends on the book, depends on the narrator. But I would encourage audiobooks. I'd also encourage reading together aloud as a family. That is not something we currently do, but it is something we cannot wait to do. Is like, oh, like if we are on a road trip with our kids, and I have some customers who do this and they've inspired me, but like they will listen to, Charlotte's Web or something in the car together as a family. So they're almost getting to have like a family book club experience that way. Um reading kind of as a family, as a group with your kids, but also knowing that reading in front of your kids is just as important. So I think there's been so much emphasis put on reading to our children, which I think is obviously crucial to literacy, to development. I think it's important. But I actually think it's very important for them to see you. They're going to mimic you. And so I think it's okay to set a timer during your day and to say, okay, we're going to read right now. And you read your book and they read their book. And by the way, 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be half an hour. It doesn't have to be an hour. Set your timer for 10 minutes. You'd be amazed what you can read in 10 minutes. Take a book with you everywhere. Audiobooks are great for that, but like I literally keep a book in my purse because you just never know when you're going to be stuck in a line or stuck in your car or stuck at the doctor's office and you've got a book with you, and bring it out instead of your phone. Bricking my phone has been very helpful to me this year. Um, but I guess I just want, it's not selfish to read for yourself.
Mm.
Um, because of all the reasons we just mentioned. It's expanding our empathy, it's changing our minds, it's helping us learn, it's helping us grow. It's showing our children a thing that you might want them to do down the road, like it's giving them something to mimic, giving them an action to mimic. It's not selfish to read for yourself. And so um yeah, and then don't be afraid, short chapters. When I had a friend who told me her favorite baby gift she ever got was like these Moth story collection books, put out by the Moth podcast, if anybody's familiar with that storytelling podcast. And they have these book collections, and it's like little essays, little short stories, maybe a poem or two. And she loved it because postpartum, that's what her brain could handle, was like these snippets of stories. So poetry collection, Lindsay Rush's A Bit Much. I think about Same by Hannah Rosenberg, where you can read a poem, and maybe all you read one day is a poem. That is enough. So yeah, books that you can pick up, put down, short chapters, audiobooks, setting a timer, um, reading in front of your kids, reading to your kids, but also reading for you. Those would be my like tips.
Yeah, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I think everybody's going to be really excited to hear this and appreciate gleaning
Yay.
some of the wisdom from you. So
I
thank you
hope
so
so.
much.
This was so fun. Thank you for the thoughtful questions. I loved it. You've given me, I feel like now I've got like two different essays to go read, and I'm going to be thinking about that C.S. Lewis quote a long time because I think it's totally true.
Great. Great. Well, thank you so much for chatting with us. I appreciate it, Annie.
Thank you.